Hello everyone. I'm trying a new thing for me right now. Something that may allow me to share how I feel about newer releases without necessarily having to spend a couple of hours screaming at non-linear video editing software or dancing about YouTube's copyright system on the off chance that it gets distracted and doesn't make my channel disappear in what I hope it's its infancy. So, most of the images will not be related to the content and they will indeed only be images. No video clips, no effects, nothing of that sort. But I hope that you can still get some entertainment of it, and perhaps an additional data point of how you should feel about whatever it is that I'm talking. So, stick around, leave a like if you actually like what I'm about to say, and feel free to leave a comment telling me what I'm full of. It hasn't been 30 seconds yet, I don't think. Poopy. And why the way you think about it is objectively superior. This is just an experiment and extremely off the cuff, so expect a stammer or a weird bit of off sound here and there. But I thought I'd make a couple of these and see how they go. So let's start this first one with a review of Clarkson's Farm and some long pedantry about cars. I've always been somewhat car crazy, never mind the fact that they represent the closest a person can get to absolute freedom of mobility short of a jetpack. But mechanically they are interesting, much in the same way that an elaborate watch or the elaborate process behind the creation of mundane objects is. So naturally, back in 2006 or 7, when I became aware of 3 people in the UK making a show unlike any other that I had ever seen before, I ran as fast as possible to it and watched every episode thanks to the magic of slow internet and a lack of even a rudimentary understanding of copyright law. That's where I got my main introduction to Jeremy Clarkson, tall, balding, prone to making similes as obtuse and complex as the underlying logic on the average 90s point-and-click game. It was only natural that my teenage self would be immediately attracted to this particular brand of humor. Blowing an old car with explosives? Sure. Run another one with a tank? Perfect. Grab a couple of friends and ask someone to loan you $1 million worth of supercars and drive around France. I'll never be able to do this, but just looking at it should be enough if the friends are relatable. And relatable they are, to the point where now Amazon seems to have given them carte blanche to do whatever it is that they want and bring it back to them. Knowing that so many people find them interesting and relatable that even their spin-off shows would create at least as much traffic as the main one, and now seems to be a whenever we get to it proposition for all of them. But to tell you the truth, even before they switched to Amazon, most of the things that they were doing outside of their, calling it a car show seems a bit misnomer, so let's say, entertainment show that got worse the further away they got from cars. James May doing a show about cars of the people was way better than him pretending to be an idiot driving a Peugeot. I was going to say I enjoyed Wipeout, but my audience is smarter than to buy that. But the one that I remember and I really enjoyed the most was Clarkson's war documentaries. You can actually find all of them on YouTube now, and if you have about 3 hours and you can stomach stories about war, death, and moments of bravery against evil or impossible odds, I can't recommend them enough. They are thoroughly enjoyable, and what was enjoyable about them was that Clarkson played it with a sobriety and weight that something like that regarded. As I grew up, and out of the mindset that the people on television were just as they were in real life, finding out that Clarkson was an avid reader, a workaholic, and a keen bear watcher was akin at discovering that your high school math teacher was both an X Games medalist and is now a major. So perhaps it was less of a surprise to me than most other people when Clarkson's Farm was announced, back then with the much better title of I Bought the Farm. If nothing else, we would at least get some actual information of the vagaries of running a farm, in between Clarkson falling over, shouting a lot, and setting fire to his fields. However, what I got instead was the absolute opposite of this. There is some falling over, sure, and some of his great ideas show up, but generally speaking, everything regarding the actual operations of the farm is played dead straight. The comedy bits are generally at the expense of Clarkson in his realization that whatever it is that he did for a gag a couple of months ago has come to bite him in the ass after all of this time. It's now been over 30 seconds. The actual operations of the farm are played dead straight, and for someone who doesn't spend a lot of time on the countryside, may serve as an excellent primer about what goes on the fields that produce the food we go and get at the supermarket. This is highlighted by the people he has surrounded himself with. People who have previously worked at the farm for years or actual experts brought in to keep whatever new ideas he has from being absolutely catastrophic. They bring an aura of honesty to the show that would have been otherwise missing, and the show would have certainly been worse for it. It would be ridiculous to think that they were completely unprepared to appear on television. The legalese involved in doing so, and a reminder that if you hear someone clearly on a show like this, they have at least a microphone wired on them, should easily dispel that illusion. But they are still people who are professionals in their field first, and the whole show thing is merely something else to keep in the back of their head as they go about their business. Having just made a point about the TV personas of people being nothing but a facet of their real life personality, one cannot help but notice that Clarkson himself feels more honest, more like he was on the aforementioned war documentaries, except that this time, instead of reading from a script that he has painstakingly worked on and polished to a near shine, the show takes every opportunity to remind you about the facts that it's working with. That the man is completely out of his depth trying to take care of the property he's owned for more than a decade, that he wishes to change this by learning about what it means to keep it, and that it is nothing like most farming shows would have you believe, any more than his motoring show is an accurate depiction of how you should behave on the roads. Every issue with a government form, or going over budget with something, or a day with not enough rain, or too much rain, serves to drop cold water on this idea of a relaxed, fast, and easy time farming that he had imagined. And of course, all of this is set on the backdrop of what has to possibly be the single worst year to have picked up farming as a result of abnormal weather conditions that mercifully get blamed only once on Clarkson's day job, and naturally the COVID pandemic generally ruining everyone's 2020. I do have complaints about the show, naturally. The farm office location is great, but the old computer in the middle of it rather makes it so that you're sucked out of the immersion of the show and dumped into a sitcom set, especially when they pull out modern laptops there to use them. While I enjoyed watching Clarkson being hoisted by his own petard, I imagine people of lesser tolerance would find those segments cringeworthy. And actually, speaking of cringeworthy, there were some bits of the final episode in which a character is forced to do something that they really don't want to do and generally have no skills to do, where I myself ended up cringing more than a little. Then again, I strongly suspect that was the reaction that they were looking at, so, if that was the case, they were extremely successful. And I honestly think that's what I would say about the show. It's very successful. It manages to take a premise that would have been very easy to fuck up with sloppy or humor-focused writing, and turns it into a figurative slice of life. A moment where everyone involved is already experiencing extraordinary circumstances, even before you have weird weather shifts and a pandemic. It is left open if they would make a second season of it, and I suppose doing so would be rather more difficult, especially taking into account that Clarkson is now much more knowledgeable about farming than he was at the beginning of the series, and that the delicate balance that lends the show most of its likability hinges on its honesty and that it isn't doing humor for humor's sake. But even if they don't do another season, leaving your audience wanting more is not a bad place to stop, especially if most of the routes to create a second season are littered with sheep eggs. So, if you have an opportunity and an Amazon Prime account, I suggest that you take a look. At the worst, you're going to learn something about farming, which, it's not that bad. Thank you for listening, everyone.